you for joining me today. The project that I'm going to be working on is a pair of men's trousers. They're brand new. He was probably reduced to what he purchased because of his height. So I'm going to show you how to adjust the back of a men's pair of trousers to take them in. Actually, these are going to be a little bit awkward because usually there's a seam all the way down here. That's okay. I'm taking them in, so not having a seam down the back is perfectly okay. The elastic here is a little bit bothersome, but we'll work it out. So let's get on with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is undo the elastic to about there either side along the top here and where the back of the waistband meets the trousers. So there's quite a bit for me to undo to start off with. I don't really want to ruin that elastic, so let's see if I can pull it out from here. And I want to go, I think, a good inch either side of the end of these pockets, so quite a big opening, only because I need to make sure that everything's flat when I put it back in. At the moment I'm trying to take out one of the belt loops. I actually need to take out both belt loops because they're quite close together, but I need to put at least one back in and move those very carefully. I don't want to have a problem with those. The other problem I do see is with the elastic and the top of the trousers. This is being put in with a chain stitch instead of straight stitch, which is certainly a bind, because if I don't manage to over sew that in exactly the right place, it will just undo. And also here, that's being chain stitched here. That's also a bit of a bind, but I'll sort that out when I get there. It just means I might have to undo this a little bit further so that I can secure that, but I'll see to that when I get there. This is going to take a little while to sort out if I'm not to put holes in anything. I'm just going to cut down towards that. I'm not going to go all the way across because obviously I don't want to cut into here, but I will cut down to it. And that allows me to undo at least 2 inches either side. If I do take it a little bit further, at least I can undo it enough to sew it back together. I think that's what I want to do. I'll play this by ear. Usually you just undo the seam of the waistband and then you undo the pieces that you need. If you've got a seam in the back, you can make them larger usually as well. I'm not undoing it with that chain stitch because if I do, I might not stop in time. This is the second loop that I'm taking out. Do it carefully. I don't want to mess anything up. The other one came out quite nicely, top and bottom, because I had to undo down there. There's no mark. Just have to make sure I do the same on this one. Threads, not the fabric. And these are tightly in, so a little bit awkward to get. Just going to open the bottom here where that seam is there, because I want to be able to open the seam, but I also open that little piece up and cut down there. Now, because I've opened that up and that, I can pin that and make sure that I use that as part of the new seam that's going into the back. Unfortunately, if he ever puts on any weight, he's not going to be able to get this all the way back, but it could be that he could get 3/4 of an inch on either side, which is quite a bit, seeing as I'm already taking an inch out. Got the belt loops out. I'm going to measure across from the center seam here, 1.5 inches here, so I can get the belt loop in, because I need the belt loop to be 1.5 inches away from that seam, otherwise I'm going to end up sewing into it. I need at least a foot width so I can miss it. So maybe move it over just a wee tad. No, I think that'd be wide enough. I'm going to pin that on here. I'm going to undo just a little bit more so I can open that seam up and sew it all together. I've got enough room to sew the belt loop top here and then all the way across. It's always surprising how far you need to undo something to get it to work. Let's recheck that. That's about 1.5 inches. I'm going to slide that underneath, pop my needle down on top of everything like that. Keep that out as best I can. Put the foot down, remove the pin so the raw edges across the top are even. I'm going to go forward, I'm going to go back and then forward again. Alright, so now I'm going to sew along the seam here. I need to take this little seam out a little bit further because I need to be able to flatten the seam out in the right direction. It's always surprising. You think, oh yeah, I've got plenty of room, and then when you've made a couple of alterations you realise you don't have enough room at all. I'm going to make sure that's down. Make sure that my raw edges across the top there. Pop this under here I'm going to have to take that back as well because that's not exactly helping me. Probably only 1/2 inch will do. I'll take some stitches out and check to see if I can pull everything out and twist it into shape. Ideally you don't want to take too much out, but to be honest it's better to take more out than you need to. That's better. I don't have the bulk trying to ping back on me. Well, I will have the bulk trying to ping back on me, but not so bad. Open that out, pull it right back, as far back as you can. Make sure that your stitching is going to go over the stitching you've just taken out, especially if you are dealing with a chain stitch, because if that comes out, you have a problem. Raw edges together, make sure everything's flat. I'd actually go back, make sure that those are secure stitches. Now the distance that you're sewing might vary from what you're used to sewing, so just try to keep everything on their original stitching, not what you're used to doing. Now that's facing forward, so I can't sew over it. Almost there, reverse. You're going to do the same going the other way. I've got to undo a little bit more here, a little bit more here, so that I can open that up. What a bird's nest of threads I've got here. So worried about pulling anything. Try to keep the extra threads out because you can't see what you're doing. I could push both of those back that way, come in to it from here I think, and then that should save me having to undo any more. So I'll make sure that seam is all over there so I don't get anything caught. I'm not going to catch all of it down, but I'll catch most of that down. Forward and back a couple of stitches, and then forward. Let's just undo those because then I can turn that back a little bit better. Open the seam up like that, make sure the pocket is in place, and sew over as far as I can, which is just there. So over the stitches that are still there, and on top of them reverse and finish. Now I've pinned the waistband in. I'm going to go over the original stitching, and I've made sure that the stitching here comes to the original stitching on the back. If it does not and it goes upwards or something, you will have a little bit of an awkward situation because the band really needs to go in as straight as possible to join up. Straighten that out slightly. I'm going to make sure my seam is forward like that. Got my finger where I'm meant to be aiming for. And reverse. Not going over the seam at all. That's perfect. This side in, I'll pin it first and then sew it in. So that goes along there where the original seam was. Pin that too, just to hold it. I don't want it slipping. Make sure my seam is going the other way. Drop my foot down, remove the pin and sew. Put it forward and back there, just a couple of stitches. Pull everything out flat. And then all the way in and over those stitches as far as I can, because I don't want to open this up too much. Over those stitches, reverse and finish. I've straightened out the belt loop. It goes down beside the pocket, so it's a little bit closer than I want it. Pop that down to where the original stitching was, like that. And I'm literally going to do forward and back. I'm not going to go over the end, and cut those threads off as well. The back seam of a pair of trousers is usually quite straight, and I want to take at least an inch off, so I'm going to mark my inch like that at the top. You know what, I'm going to put both legs down the same hole. Now I used to have a dressmaker's ruler that went round corners. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ruler on the mark at the top, and I need to make sure that I start coming in round about here. So I'm going to put my mark on there because it's straight to about there. As it comes around the curve, I have to bring it in. So the curve comes here, and I'm just going to bring it around and into shape because I don't want to take anything off the inside leg. I just want to hold that and then come round. There we go, perfect. This is being put in with a chain stitch. I'm going to start at the base here. I'm going to sew over the chain stitch. I don't want any of that coming undone. Pop that under here, close to the seam there. Forward and back over the stitching. And on over the stitching, and then slowly peel it off as I go around that curve that I've put in. Now I've left it sewn together because that means that it's not moving. It's like it's already pinned into place. On up to the top. I will adjust the trousers as I get there. go. As we come into the top, I'm going to pull my seams together here, like that. Make sure they hold. Come into the top here. Straighten out the waistband where I cut it, so everything's up. Do want to aim for 1 inch at the top here. I'll just mark that there. I can straighten it up slightly up to the top here. Keep everything together and reverse. Just going to take out this seam. I'm not going to cut anything back. You might at some point want to put a new seam in and let the trousers out slightly, and he'll get 1.5 inches extra out of his waistband. This will take a little minute to do, and it should stop running once it gets into my stitching down here, and I've got quite a long area stitched in, so I'm happy about that. It might come the other way, so I don't want to be pulling on something and then discover that it's not going to work. I've turned the trousers the right way round, open the seams up so they're nice and flat, and actually I did quite a good join here, not that you can see it, but my centre seam goes up there and my waistband seam comes right where I need it. I'm really pleased with that. Sometimes it goes in wonky. Now I'm going to just steam that seam open as far as I can. I'm more concerned about how straight it is at the top than at the bottom, because at the bottom it's going to do its own thing. At the top I need it open and doing what it needs to do so that I can sew it back into position. There we go. See, even on the back it's nice. I like that. Did quite a good job with that. I'm going to clean up this so I can see where everything is. I am slightly worried about the way this is going to go in, because obviously it's doubled over now. I don't want to cut that back at all, so I think I'm going to just have to treat it as one thing. I'm going to have to take that off because I can't get into there. I think it's okay that side. That's perfect. Twist that over, and actually the top stitching I'm going to have to take a little bit further back because I can't line that into place just yet. So I'm going to take the top stitching out so that I can do that. I'm going to take this off. It should give me enough room. I've undone the top stitching a little ways either side. I'm going to fold that over and I'm going to sew it from the more firm fabric down like that. Now at some point I've got to sew that in, and I think what I'll do is I'll line that up there. I've put it on top, and the reason I've put it on top is so that the sewing machine as I get there won't push the elastic away. It should keep it more or less steady. I'm not pulling anything, I've just got it flat. Open that up. I'm keeping the top of the waistband about level with where it was. So there's a little bit of black showing underneath, and push that elastic back against there. You can't really see it, and then pull that out, I think. Pull that down. Do it slowly. Do not rush this. The two pieces of elastic are level. I think that's more or less level there. The only thing that has pushed is this fabric on top, but not by very much. Make sure the elastic is even at the top all the way across, and then into the other side, and sew over the original stitches just as I had on the other side where I started. There we go, as far as you can go. I think that's gone in quite flat. You know what, that will work. It's not perfect. It's even there, but the waistband does go down a little bit if I pull it, and that's basically because there's all that bulk between there. But I think I'm going to just leave it because I can get a bit fussy on this. I don't think that is going to show very much, because if he's got a belt on there, that's not going to show at all. It's very minimal down. It's a little bit bulky. I really don't want to take the elastic out, so I'm still going to have to take this back. I can't work with that. There's always a little bit extra to do. I think that's giving that to me. So I'm going to pop that underneath there so I can sew over the original stitching. I'm just going to pull this seam back from here and sew across. The reason I've put the elastic underneath is so that the elastic doesn't stretch as I'm sewing it. And I'm going to make my way all the way across. So I don't think the back of the trousers lowering slightly will make much of a difference. Now the reason I put these flat over each other is so that I don't have any bulk. And again, I'm going to sew over my stitches here to make sure that everything is secure. Now this is a little bit of a bind because the stitching I pulled out comes to here, and if I fold it over I have a loop in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew across as far as I can and then restart across. I think that's the best way of doing this. Just pull that up, pull the fabric up so it's sewn underneath. Reverse and across. Pull that as far over as I can. Actually, I think just a couple of reverse stitches there. Remove that, trim back. That has caught down the stitching there. Then I'm going to have to put that underneath again as far back as I can, which is not very far, but it is over the stitching that I've already put in. I keep pulling out other stitches here. I'm going to go forward and back a couple of stitches to hold it and on through. I'm going to have to deal with one side at a time, I think. Make sure that's down tight. I think once it's sewn into place, everything will work. Now, on this side, I only have to go to there, which isn't into the belt loop, so I can over sew those few stitches there. Makes life a lot easier. And on over the join. The young lad should be wearing a belt, I should imagine, so that will come into place. And I'll go over the stitching here a little ways. There we go. And then back. Cut my threads back. It doesn't look great because of the bulkiness here, but I think it will work. Now, the last thing to do is to put the loop back in. Unfortunately, I don't think I can put it on top there because it goes through all of that. So I am going to offset it just slightly. I think it'll be fine. I dislike it when I can't work things properly. Let's see whether this works. Lift the needle just a wee tad so I can fit all of that under there. I don't know if this is going to work. It might twist the foot too much for me. Yeah, it's not going to work. I'm going to see if I can get it to work this way. It should be on the thickness. It does look more stable. So I'm going to do that. Turn it around, lower the foot and come back over. Lift up and then turn it back round. So it's like doing forward and back, but you're just going forward all the time. It's not the prettiest, but it works. And he has a back loop. Usually you'd put it as close as you could here, but because of the elastic I just wasn't able to do that. With these trousers I do have to shorten them. Now this isn't the usual way I do a hem. I've just folded up once and hemmed it, and now I'm going to fold up a second time and I'm going to hem it again. The reason is my friend's grandson is still quite young, so he's got a bit of growing room to go. So we decided that we wouldn't cut the fabric, we would just make sure that he could have them lengthened if necessary. So I'm going to do the second turn up on the other leg as well. So if you've got growing lads, this is a way of making trousers last a bit longer. There we go. Won't take a minute. Make sure it is the width of the hem underneath, otherwise you'll have one leg longer than the other. For the top layer, take that out. I'm just going to do a couple of stitches just into the side seam like this, fold it over my fingers like that, pick up several threads spaced out across the top about 1/4 of an inch, pick up just a few threads, aren't next to each other, they're kind of spread out and across, and that's all I'm doing for this. So in, out, and then across. And that should do a quick stitch across there. I don't think he'll be needing his trousers to be this short for very long. And again, in, out, in, out, in, out. Small stitches and across till I get to the other side. It's a easy way of doing a quick hem if you need to, rather than the herringbone one, which I usually use. And I'm picking up maybe 2 or 3 strands at a time. Finish that up. They'll also be easy for my friend to be able to unpick. Thank you for joining me today. This was a little bit awkward with all the undoings before I could put it back together. I'm sure he's going to be pleased with his trousers. The fact that I've done the hem twice, but I think that will work out well as well, because in a month or so, or by the end of the year, he'll probably want them lengthened and then lengthened again maybe next year or the year after as he grows. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be brilliant. And in the meantime, take care. See you later. Ciao.